Hello, everybody. This is the first ever Poets and Quants CentreCourt event in Houston, Texas. And this is our first admissions panel in Houston. My name is Marc Ethier. I'm the managing editor of Poets and Quants. And I think it's fitting that we have such an all-star panel here because we're in the home of the World Series champion Houston Astros. So I'd like to welcome, to my left, I'm going to refer to my notes so I get your titles right, but to my left is Kelly Wilson. She's the Executive Director of MBA Admissions at the Tepper School of Business at Carnegie Mellon. Then we have Ruthie Piles, who is the Assistant Dean and Director of MBA Admissions at the Olin Business School at Washington University in St. Louis. Alyssa Dominioni, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. She's the International Marketing and Recruiting Manager at HEC Paris. She came the farthest, I think it's safe to say today. Absolutely. And Kelly Scott, who is Senior Associate Director of MBA Admissions at the USC Marshall School of Business. So I'd like to welcome them all, thank them for coming. CentreCourt is, it's about helping people find the right program, the program with the right fit for them. And it's about helping them through what can be a very selective admissions process. I hope we do some of that today. But the first thing I'd like to do is talk about something that's a little more topical and something that's one of the top stories in MBA news right now, and that's declining application volume. Some schools, well, many schools are seeing a huge drop in applications. Some are seeing minor drops, some are avoiding the problem. But here in Houston, Rice University, as we reported at Poets and Quants, saw a 27.7% drop in their application volume from last year. The University of Texas McCombs School of Business in Austin saw a nearly 20% drop. UNC, Georgetown McDonough, also double-digit drops. So my question is the U.S. Losing the talent pipeline? And is it a reversible trend? What do we need to reverse it? And I'll start with you, Kelly.
Sure. I don't think we're losing the talent pipeline. In fact, for the Tepper School, while we did have a dip in applications, about 9.5%, our domestic applications were actually up. And so if you compare this year to 2 years ago, our overall applications were up slightly as well. And so I think we need a little bit more time to realize what exactly is happening. But I haven't lost my hope that things are going to just chug along very soon.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that there is certainly a shift happening in the market. But I wouldn't necessarily say that we've lost hope, right? So one of the most interesting things that we're seeing at Olin is certainly a diversification of the pipeline. So we're seeing, for example, this year Olin welcomed roughly 30% international, but of that, 26 different countries represented from 5 different continents. So there's a lot of international diversity in our program, and I'm sure my colleagues are also experiencing something similar. So I think that that's a really, really positive sign.
Kelly?
Yes, I agree with that totally. I think the population is just concentrating themselves more towards a certain sector of schools that they're looking at. I think for us, we actually went up a little bit. We've been going up in applications, so ours went up about 1%. It's not a lot, but we'll take it. So we've been seeing basically a lot of pipeline for students who are starting earlier to start exploring for their MBA experience. So there may be a lull right now, but I would suggest in the next year or two, we might see an explosion of applications since so many are starting early on their journey.
And then Alyssa, I'd like to ask if maybe you see Europe poised to benefit from the shift.
So yeah, the shift is indeed coming to Europe. So we have had about an overall 30% increase in applications, so doing very well. More applicants from the US as well. And I think there's a great article in Poets and Quants about why there's that shift. A lot of candidates are now looking for a truly international career. And the European programs offer, like at HEC Paris, for example, it's 92% international. And a lot of the European programs give that diversity in the class, which some of the students are looking for. The other thing that is attractive to students is the shorter time out of the business world. Programs are closer to a year. At HEC Paris, it's 16 months. And so that, of course, has an impact on return on investment. So we definitely have seen applications grow from that. Bouncing off to what should we do and how is that going to go back up, I think we have had a chance, at least in our team, we offer a very personalized service, and I'm sure a lot of schools do that, but it's, we believe, a great way to actually retain those candidates. We've been working a lot on organizing more personalized events, like I answer all emails, I call my candidates personally. We organize events with alumni. We do more targeted webinars and newsletters. And so I think it's also up to the schools to keep remembering that education is about people, and so the service we're going to offer you is definitely putting those people back at the center, and I think that's a great way schools can definitely help the applications come back in.
Does anybody have any thoughts on things that can be done or along the lines of what Alyssa said that HEC is doing?
I would love to jump in and just say that I completely agree with what she said. In fact, this year Olin has launched a global immersion program where we're going to be doing just that. So for example, students will be starting in St. Louis, then they'll be traveling to Washington, D.C. for about 7 days or so. They'll be participating and learning from representatives who are experts in Asia as well as Europe. They'll also be doing team-based experiences. They'll be visiting a unique museum in the Washington, D.C. area and really learning how economics and values intersect. After that, they'll go to Barcelona, where they'll learn about managerial thinking. They'll also participate in kind of an amazing race type team experience. And then after that, they'll travel to Shanghai, where they're actually going to participate and learn a little bit about global supply chain, global markets, and operations before coming back to St. Louis. So I absolutely agree with you that people are looking for a global experience. We're certainly trying to respond to that at Olin, and we've also implemented opportunities for individuals to do dual degree opportunities with our business analytics program or some of our other specialized masters, in addition to having a shorter degree as well. So students can complete their degree sooner. So I agree with you that we absolutely have to be responsive in this marketplace, and I think that we're also trying to do that as well.
And I'd like to add also, Marshall actually has been doing international experience since 1996. As far as we know, we're one of the few schools that require international consulting projects as part of your core program. So everyone goes overseas as part of Marshall. We have a very, very diverse country. Over 31 countries are represented in our program. But there's one piece I think was a little bit missing as far as looking at the MBA applications. And one of the things is the market is starting to drive itself towards specialization. So Marshall has over 11 specialized master's programs. They're usually about a year, maybe a year and a half. Because what we're finding is companies are starting to look for specialized skills, such as business analytics, things like operations, or even we have one in social entrepreneurship. Can you believe it? That's a thing. So what we're seeing now, in a way, to mitigate the costs of the traditional 2-year MBA, is a lot of 1-year specialized masters that are cropping up along with online programs, which we also have at Marshall.
Marshall is the sort of the starting point for my next question, which is we love data at Poets&Quants, and this summer we wrote a story about Marshall being the first elite school to achieve the gender parity, and that was it's a huge deal, and I was hoping that Kelly could tell us what you did to achieve it.
Well, it started with determination, right? It's one of those things where, okay, can we be first? Can we be first in the top 20 to hit this target? So once we kind of settled on that, let's give this a try. Let's see what's happening. And we started to also see an increase of women in our applicant pool. We also understand outside that companies are clamoring themselves for gender parity, not just in intermediate roles, but also in leadership roles. And you need to cultivate women to get there. And you also need to attract those great companies to your school. So what we did is we basically, with the help of our students, did a hard-on press in terms of our Women's Weekend, concentrating how we recruit to women as well. We actually had a lot more kind of personal coffee chats, personal interactions with students to give them a more in-depth understanding of our program and how they fit. So we're happy to say, and I wear my button, you know, to say that we're the first to 50, and our actual number for this year is 52% women. So we're really glad of that, and we're actually noticing a good cultural shift in that, in the seriousness of what they're focusing on right now. So we're very happy.
I'd love to hear what the other schools are doing, what they're talking about when it comes to increasing the number of women in business school, programs or efforts underway, anything?
Sure. At the Tepper School, we are seeing an increase in the number of women in the program. What's happening is at the same time, we're growing the program. So 2 years ago, we were at 207 students. This year, we're at 237. So it's a little more challenging then to be able to promote the fact that we have more women students in the program. Right. The percentage overall may not be shifting dramatically. But we too are working with our students, our Graduate Women in Business, our TWIB organization, Tepper Women in Business, I should say, are very interested and willing to partner with us to help us recruit a strong group of women to the program. And so we've got underway some outreach that's happening with the TWIB organization as well as some other diversity organizations as well. And so I think the difference is the students. If the students are motivated to work with the admissions office to make advances, then we can do it. Because the reality is the students are the best salespeople, right?
Absolutely.
They're in the program, they know what's happening, they know the experience, and that authenticity of the information that they get and the way that it's shared, I think can't be duplicated by an admissions team.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I think this is an excellent panel for this particular question because I know that each and every one of the panelists here are doing a tremendous job in recruiting women. Olin was able to rise to 42% this year. So we are up in our women as well. We were also ranked number 4 globally by the Financial Times for number 4 for MBA programs for women. So we're very proud of that. It is a huge initiative on behalf of our dean to really continuously try to hit that 50%. He really understands and pushes the importance of gender parity and having that voice in the classroom. So it's a big push on behalf of Olin. We do a lot of events at Olin that are school-wide. We, on International Women's Day, we do the She Suite, where we have professionals from communities come in and really be a part of talking to women, mentoring women. Our Olin Women in Business is an incredible organization on our campus. So absolutely agree with what Kelly's saying, that the women in our program are really pushing a lot of these initiatives and really the force behind making sure that there is equal seat at the table. And I think that one of the other things that I'm noticing is just the men and allies, right? So for example, the men in our program really understanding the importance of that and also continuously pushing the initiatives. So very, very proud to see that.
I find it very inspirational, and we're definitely aiming for 50. Definitely not there, we're closer to 30%, so this is a very big inspiration for us as well, and it's a message to all the ladies out there. We are looking for more women candidates at HEC Paris. On top of what some of the events that were mentioned, mentoring, for example, women who have been admitted into the program and putting them in contact with current students. We're also part of Forte Foundation, so supporting the foundation that supports women in business with scholarships, mentorship programs. About 60% of our women get scholarships, so we definitely want to push that. But it's also about personal stories, I think, and making each woman's MBA journey particular to her situation. So we actually had, for example, an American candidate who was pregnant during her MBA. I remember seeing her just before the exams, and she was very close to giving birth. And she was like, I'm just hoping the baby's going to stay in until the end of my corporate time. I was like, oh my goodness. She was amazing. And so she managed to push back a term. So we kind of worked with her. She interned at Facebook. She's a very ambitious woman. She's great. But it's also looking at individual women's journeys and supporting that because we understand it's also sometimes a family time. But yeah.
You all believe that gender parity is achievable on a widespread way, and that USC Marshall is not an anomaly or anything, that this is going to happen at some point?
Hopefully.
I personally think that, well, I don't think this, we know just from data, the number of women taking the GMAT test is not increasing dramatically. So really we're fighting over the same size pie, we're just looking for bigger slices of it. Right. I think the challenge for the industry is to figure out how to draw women to MBA programs in a stronger way. If you think about women coming to an MBA program are coming at the time where they have some significant choices to make between career and family. And so that's a real issue that doesn't really get put on the table as we talk about the gender parity.
But one of the things it's pipeline, actually. I mean, even though women are not taking GMAT as much, they're taking the GRE, they're taking other exams. And we're finding out, of course, here in the US, more women are graduating with undergraduate degrees than men. So what we have is a pipeline of opportunity there of if we are able to find a way to catch these women earlier and at least give them the information, give them the knowledge of what a business degree is, because a lot of times they don't even know what it is. So we're talking about using that pipeline as an opportunity for us to get out there and kind of sell the MBA itself, sell the degree, the business degree itself, and perhaps we can get more women who decide at some point in their life, maybe it is time for me to get an MBA or some other specialized master's in business.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's the combination of really educating the female population about kind of what a business school can really do for them and help them through those difficult decisions. And then, of course, having leadership at the organization that really is very passionate about achieving that goal. So I think the combination of those two things is a very powerful force.
I'm glad you brought up the GMAT, because that's my next question was just as in a general admissions director way, how much importance do you place on the GMAT? And sort of as a side question to that, is the GRE really, is it gaining prominence, so to speak, in admissions?
Sure.
Anybody?
Okay, we're like,
Well, I'm happy to begin. I mean, the GMAT still has a significant impact. I mean, the first thing to just clarify for what the GMAT is, it is not an intelligence test. It really is just to give us an indication of how strong a candidate can be handling the full-time MBA core classes. So really it's just an indicator. And we don't look at that in a vacuum anyway. We're going to look at your whole academic background, your GMAT, as well as your transcripts. Because the one thing we want to know is before you come into our program, are you demonstrating the academic horsepower to get through our programs? We are not schools who want you to flunk out or fail. We want you to get through it. So it's very important. But we also look at it, you know, at USC, we're definitely going to look at it in terms of merit. Your GMAT score may or may not determine whether you get a scholarship and how much of a scholarship that you can get. Again, it's just one piece of it, though. It's not just the only make or break piece of scholarship, so don't be concerned about that. But what we're finding, too, is we're finding a lot more candidates in the pool. It's just growing who have decided to take the GRE instead of the GMAT. So, again, having those two pieces is not a vacuum piece for us, because those transcripts are 4 years, at least minimum 3 to 4 years of your life. That gives you more of a longer academic picture than just one test. But again, it's still important, so we always say do your best.
Yeah. I think, go ahead, please.
No,
please.
you go right ahead.
I was just going to say, I think Kelly talked about this, well, both Kellys, I think, talked about this, but I think that we are seeing, for example, more women taking the GRE. What we, as a school, we are certainly seeing both more of an equality between GMAT and GRE. So we obviously take both. We don't prefer one over the other, but we are getting more and more candidates looking at the GRE as well as the GMAT. Some of it is because we have a lot of dual degree options within our school. So we have individuals coming from the social work school or getting their JD or potentially, their MD. So, they could have potentially taken these tests at other times. But there really is, we really want you to take the best test for you, right? Because while it's similar content, it's, a little bit different in speaks to different learning styles. So I think that it's important as you think about kind of the different tests that you want to take. It's not necessarily that we prefer one over the other, but it's really just about take the best test that's right for you.
Yeah.
To build on something that Kelly was saying, in terms of wanting to be able to determine if you're going to be successful in our programs. And so if you're someone that maybe doesn't have a significant amount of quantitative coursework in your undergraduate work, MBA programs are in part quantitatively oriented. Some may be more than others, but all MBA programs have some quantitative components. And so we want to make sure, for those of you that may not have a lot of math or quant in your academic work, that we've got something, and that would be the GMAT or the GRE, that would be an indicator of your aptitude. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you have had to do the quantitative work. We're looking for aptitude. And so that score can be a signal that you have the aptitude to be successful in our programs.
I just wanted, to jump on. We also accept both GRE and GMAT. If you're not sure of your score, do not hesitate to reach out to the school. I am, for example, able to look at your GMAT score, look at your background, and give you an idea. Although we don't have a minimum, we have an average of 690, but we will consider your experience a lot, and we'll take that into account to recommend what type of GMAT score we want. So don't hesitate to reach out to the school if you're not exactly sure of your score, or if you should retake it. And you can retake the test several times. At HEC, for example, we only take your highest score. So get excited about learning again and just take it again and get it out of the way.
Can you envision a time when all schools will just accept either or are we moving toward a time when the GMAT is replaced by the GRE, or either of those scenarios realistic?
I think options are always important, right? So I think it's always important to give people options, and as we just talked about, different tests are going to appeal to different learning styles and to different individuals. So I think, one of the things that I believe that every panelist here encourages is that we want individuals to be successful. We want you to put your best foot forward when you're applying to business schools. And so I don't know if necessarily one would go away or one might surge over another, but I do believe that there should always be options for students in order to make sure that they can put their best foot forward. I think that's very important.
In admissions, and you don't have to reveal the number or anything, but is there a basement for the GMAT score?
I think that's a good question to ask. We get that question a lot. What score should I get? How should I be accepted? So my answer to this is, yeah, there's a basement per se, if you look at it. I would tell candidates for the schools that you're investigating, make sure you're looking to see what their average scores are, what their 80% scores are. And frankly, this is a judgment call. It's called being reasonable. If a school has an average of 690, ours is 705. If you walk in here with a GMAT of 400, it may be a bit of a challenge, right? Yeah. I think most schools will tell you, if you're looking at that 80% range, that's 80% of the current class has GMAT scores in that range. So that can give you, if you're in that range, that's an encouragement. But remember, there are 10% below that lowest number and 10% above that highest number. So as you're looking at your test, you want to make sure you're doing your best. But there is a point of diminishing returns, I think, for some candidates, because some candidates will take it so many times. And after about the third or fourth time, if your score is not increasing significantly, you just may be where you're just going to stay. And usually that is a good indication is don't worry about it. Now it's time to concentrate on other parts of your application that will stand out. I think that these standardized tests are probably the biggest pain point for candidates. The good thing is if you do well, the score is good for 5 years or so. But at a certain point, you can't spend 100% of your time on the test and neglect the rest of your application. So, judgment call.
Yeah, I'll add to that. I don't, at Tepper, we don't employ the use of a strict cutoff, but I will tell you that it is important that you're going to be, or we believe that you're going to be successful in the academic work. And so the combination of the GMAT and the academic credentials that you provide in your application, give us those insights. And so for someone that might have a little bit lower GMAT, I'm going to look for some other coursework that might balance that and give me different information than I get from looking at the GMAT alone. And so I think you all would agree, at a very base point, the very foundation of what admissions does is make sure that we're admitting people we think will be successful in the program.
What about classic other mistakes that you might make in your application? What have you seen, or what tales of woe have you come across?
The name of the school?
Yeah.
Get the name of the school right.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
But I think after that, it's really finding the right fit. You'll hear about fit regularly, but get to know the school. How is the school going to actually help you? How strong is it in the sector that you're interested in? Does it have specializations in social entrepreneurship, digital transformation, strategy, marketing? Who are the professors? So really get to know the school, do your personal research. I think one of the mistakes we would have is someone who wouldn't have actually considered the different opportunities that they're going to have to learn during the program. So it's going to be classes, but it's also all the leadership activities that are there. Are you interested in that? Is that what you're looking for in terms of skills, networking opportunities, personal development? So really get to know the school on a personal level and speak to the school.
And I think this goes without saying too, but I'll say it only because we see the exceptions, is just follow the directions, answer the essay questions that we're asking you, give us a resume that we can actually read and not have to get an interpreter to look through. Because one of the things I think candidates sometimes do is they kind of craft their application to what they think the admissions committee wants to hear or see versus bringing their authentic self. And sometimes when they look at the essay questions, they may say, I don't know if these essay questions convey who I am. I'm just going to go ahead and write an essay about what I think they should know about me. And sometimes it's actually a pretty good essay, but it's not what we've asked for. So judgment calls on the things that you do in the application are very key. In fact, one area I sometimes see a little bit of mistake is that optional essay. So our optional essay, for the most part, is optional, and usually we have candidates use that optional essay to speak a little bit about something that may be a red flag, right? If your GPA is not that great, if you have a story to tell because of that, or any other thing that might have happened, the optional essay is a good place to do it. But if you use the optional essay to write your own manifesto about yourself and why you would be a good candidate at our school or sometimes the wrong school that's in the essay, that's probably not a good thing to do.
Yeah, I would certainly say interviews are also really important to prepare for. Kelly's absolutely right that we see a lot of preparing for one particular school, and then they may not necessarily put as much effort into some of the other schools they're applying into. But I would say the interview as well is really important. This is really where we just want to learn about you and learn about your background and what's important to you. But we also want to understand from you, what does the fit look like from your perspective between, you and our school? And so preparing for that interview, making sure that you've done your research, that you know our brand, that you know who we are, what we do, and why it matters to you, I think is incredibly important because we've spent the time learning a lot about you so that we can ask you the right questions. And so we hope that it's reciprocal in that respect.
Reflecting again on a mistake that candidates may make, one that comes to my mind is to think that there is one ideal student for a given program. I can't tell you the number of times that question is asked, and my response is always, there isn't one ideal. Truly, we're looking for a collection of individuals who will bring a diverse background and set of experiences to the program because that's what's going to make the experience of you and your classmates a richer experience. And so we're not looking for kind of a cookie cutter type of student. We're looking for a variety of different profiles to bring this collective together that can help you to grow as a person and as a professional while you're in the MBA program.
I guess as a sort of a corollary to that, I was going to ask for each of you to give your best piece of advice to applicants. Some of you already sort of did that, but if you wouldn't mind maybe revisiting it what would you tell, if you had one thing to say to a potential applicant, what would you impart to them?
I would think that one of my best pieces of advice would be to keep an open mind. I think that it's really easy to get trapped up in rankings and locations and, oh, I really want to do this. And sometimes we forget to kind of look a little bit outside of our comfort zone and think broadly. There's a lot of incredible schools out there that can really offer you some amazing things if we just have a good conversation, right? If you open your mind to that. So I would say that, you know, I understand there's a lot of schools and there's a lot of noise out there, and there's a lot of times when it's hard to kind of navigate through that, but there's a lot of great events like the Poets and Quants CentreCourt events. There's many events that happen across the US and around the world. I know all of these schools put on individual events, and I would really encourage you as much as possible to pick up the phone, talk with an admissions representative, learn a little bit more about the school, be open to maybe schools that you haven't thought about, because sometimes you meet someone and you have an amazing conversation and you end up going someplace that you never imagined you would end up, but it ends up being the perfect match for you. So I would certainly say keep an open mind, because this is your adventure, this is your investment in yourself and in your future, and all of us just want you to be successful in that.
And I'd absolutely just repeat again what I said earlier. I mean, bring your authentic self to this process. We're looking for such diversity. We want diversity of background. We want diversity of thought. And you're an individual. Even if 5 of you came from the same company, you're not all 5 having the same experience at that company. So anything that you have that brings out your uniqueness, that's what we're looking for. You know, at Marshall, we definitely love to see multidimensional people. I think we can all say that, multidimensional people. So don't be afraid to think about the things that you do outside of work, hobbies, leadership, things that you are passionate about. Because, you know, and I think we can all say this, in interviews, we can talk the basics, you know, let's tell me more about your work. And then once we pinpoint something that candidate is passionate about, that interview just changes into the most wonderful conversation, the back and forth, getting to know you and you getting to know us, because don't be afraid to ask us the hard questions. And then with that said, don't neglect, if you can't make it to campuses, because it can be expensive going all over the place, students, alumni, they want to talk to you. They want to talk about their experience. And I can tell you for the most part, students are going to give you the good, the bad, the ugly. There's no such thing as a perfect MBA program, but you need to get the right fit. I think that we talked about that. You need to get the right fit. And I personally believe there is a right fit for every person in some program somewhere. It may not necessarily be the top program on your list, but everyone, I think, ends up at the program where they should be.
My advice is similar, but I'll take a little bit of a different approach in terms of the community. You want to make sure that you're getting to know the community. Kelly did touch on alumni, current students, faculty. When you visit, if you can visit, that's amazing, because that gives you an opportunity to kind of get a sense of what it's like there. You want to find a place that you're going to thrive when you get there. And so it's really important that you're doing your due diligence to try to uncover the opportunities that exist at the different schools that you're considering. And so just think about, you know, when I get there and I'm going to spend 2 years from there, am I going to thrive? Am I going to grow? Is this the right investment for me?
It's never usually a wrong decision to go for a holiday in Europe. So come and visit the school. So I would definitely agree with visiting the school. This is going to be a life-changing decision. You're going to be, in the case of HEC Paris, close to Versailles, on a campus that's just outside of Paris. Come and experience the close-knit community that was mentioned. So I definitely think, although it can be very expensive to travel, it's a very expensive experience to do an MBA. So if you do have that opportunity to come, speak to students, but also come and see presentations or come and live the campus. The other thing that we haven't maybe mentioned talked about as much is in the application, we always talk about resumes and essays, but there's also other elements of that are going to help you stand out, including the recommendation letters. So pick your recommenders well. And the other thing I was thinking about is we have a part in the application called extracurricular activities and leadership potential, and international exposure, sorry. So what are your extracurricular activities and what is your international exposure? don't just describe it. You are going to stand out if you're going to tell us more about the level of influence you've had in some activities that you've done. What have you actually learned from it? And so there might be 5 people from the same company, but again, tell us more about that.
I'm glad you mentioned recommendation letters, because I was wondering, aren't recommendation letters just praise from people who know the applicant? And how much weight do you really put on on recommendation letters?
Well, I'm just going to start off the bat and let you know that USC Marshall does not accept letters of recommendation in our application. We kind of abolished them 2 years ago, partly for that reason. I mean, I've been doing this for years, and we find out in the past they're usually like a glowing kind of character reference, more so than a little bit more in-depth information that we're looking for. And surprisingly enough, we've seen some bad judgment calls with letters of recommendations that are not necessarily positive. So it kind of, in a way, it kind of takes a barrier, a little piece of pressure off of the candidate. And the balance that is a lot more emphasis on the interview, because when we're sitting and talking to you face-to-face, and in some cases Skype if you're unable to come to campus, we find that gives us a lot more robust information and more insights into why you're on this journey and why you've decided to even include Marshall as one of your options for school.
Go ahead, please.
We do ask for 2 letters of recommendations. Most of them are positive, but I do agree with Kelly. What I would say, how much emphasis and how important are they? I think it's an opportunity for schools to see you through someone else's eyes. And so it's insightful for us to hear about that other person talking about your achievements, how you did teamwork as well, because that's sometimes not something that's going to come out in your resume. So we want to know more about your ability to work in teams. So we do put a strong emphasis on them. Having said that, a recommendation would be, don't hesitate to go and sit down with your recommenders, because they are very busy people, and you want to make sure that they will have your achievements top of mind when they're going to write that recommendation letter. So make sure you do take a bit of time with them. We do put an emphasis on them, and we read them, every one of them.
Yeah, I think that we know that many companies and organizations are looking for strong communicators, individuals who can problem solve, who work well in teams, who have strong quantitative skills, individuals that are very proactive, that can prioritize things. And so many times in a letter of recommendation, we actually get great examples through somebody else's eyes about how you've excelled in those areas, initiatives that you've taken. Different perspectives are often very important in the admissions process, because obviously we want, the application is your presentation. The letter of recommendation is sometimes just a different perspective on your strengths, as well as areas for growth. So remember that we don't expect you to be perfect, right, walking in the door. You're coming to an MBA program because you have areas that you want to improve, right? Because you want to advance your skills. Maybe you want to just gain a different perspective, whatever it might be. But remember that understanding your strengths as well as your areas of growth are incredibly important to us, because it also helps us set up your journey once you come to our school, right? So understanding where you want to grow or where others think you may need to grow is also incredibly important. So understanding a little bit more about who you are is where that comes out in the letter of recommendation.
The only thing different I would add is when we look at recommendations, we're not looking at them in isolation either, right? And so as we're reading your application, some themes start to emerge about you and your candidacy. And so it's really great when the recommendation aligns with what I've gotten so far as I've been reading your application. I guess it goes without saying that the recommendation is one of the last things that I read, just my personal kind of approach to reading, but it helps when those two things align. And I think the way that you can ensure that that's aligning is to choose someone that knows you well. And that's more important for all of us, I would say. You would agree that getting a recommender who knows you well is much more important than getting the biggest title person in your organization to write the recommendation.
I think I'd be remiss if I didn't ask this panel of experts to each, if you would, reflect on the the changes that have happened in admissions over the last, say, 3 years, and maybe even then prognosticate into the future of how you think things are going and what big changes might be on the way. Just for example, maybe more digital interviews, for example, or things like that. What are your thoughts on that? I'd like to put you on the spot, just sort of put on your prognosticator's caps.
Well, you know, you kind of mentioned, I was just thinking, the first thing I was thinking was technology. How technology has helped us to get a lot more data, to be a lot more specific as we're looking at our strategies and looking for the types of candidates that we want in our program. We're using a lot more data analytics these days than we have in the past to give us that information so that we can target students. I mean, what we're finding in admissions at USC for sure, you know, we're in a state that has so many industries, so many interests, entrepreneurship, you know, you can get entertainment, things you may not find in other places. So we're not that school that someone says, oh, that's the finance school or that's the marketing school. We're like the everything school. Because what we're finding is the interests of incoming students are so diverse and so scattered. And even if you try to put people in a category, let's say technology, or even say entertainment, right? You think of Hollywood studios. But in entertainment, guess what? Amazon's an entertainment company. They have their own studio. So it's about really looking a little bit more specific to the needs of the individual, but always keeping in mind the needs of the market. And one of the things we did recently, actually, is in our full-time MBA program, we did a complete curriculum review. And one of the things we're finding out from our companies and what they're looking for is they assume when students get in good programs, they're going to get a great education. So that's not the differentiator. The differentiator is critical thinking, reasoning, being able to collaborate, and being able to make a decision with ambiguous information faster, better, quicker, using the data analytics that everybody's going to deal with. So that's what I see, you know, we see that coming into the market, and the school that continues to innovate that faster and quicker, those are going to be the schools that are going to come out ahead.
I would say one of the things that we're certainly seeing is the combination of values and data. So, you know, I don't know if it's the fact that, you know, St. Louis has about 25% of the population that is volunteers or involved in some sort of charity, or the fact that we have the #1 social work school in the country. I mean, WashU is a place where people matter and serious work is certainly done, but we're certainly attracting candidates who are very interested in having a profound impact because they understand that the decisions that they make may not change the world, but they matter, and they have the potential for difference, right? Either short or long-term, personal or far-reaching. And so I think one of the things that we're really seeing as a shift in the market, to your point, is individuals who are really looking to navigate through the areas of gray, who understand that decisions are always black and white. And when you are faced with, for example, saving jobs or saving the environment, you want to go to a school that's preparing you how to manage through those difficult decisions and have that kind of comprehensive degree that really prepares you for those types of decisions. So I would say that that's certainly something that we're seeing, so certainly to back up Kelly's point.
Going on, what I would love to see in admissions, I'll share a bit of a story. At HEC Paris, we have military training. So we send you to the French military for 2 days, pure experiential learning. I just graduated from the program, and I had to lead a team of 12 leaders. Everyone in an MBA wants to be a leader, to build a bridge and cross a river. I'm not an engineer, I'm not strong, so the team dynamics, the channel of communication, the vision, the delegation, everything I did through that, I learned a lot. I would love to see that in admissions. I would love for us to be able to do this small exercise of how are you actually going to work as a team, because I think that would be a great opportunity for us to assess your team working skill, your communication skills. And I actually, when I am at a fair or when I do individual or small group meetings at fairs to prepare for admissions, I will look at how candidates interact and if they pay attention to each other. So I would love to see in future admissions some more experiential learning that I believe makes a real difference in the MBA programs.
You know, Marc, when you asked that question, several of us, our minds went right to technology.
Yeah.
And at the Tepper School, we're excited about what the impact technology is having on business. Our business is no different. And so I'm excited to see what that might be. Right now, we're an analytics-driven program that happens to sit on Carnegie Mellon's campus that has the #1 computer science school. And it's that intersection of business, technology, and analytics that we're very excited about. And I would love to be able to prognosticate what the future might look like for admissions directors. I don't know how quickly this may come to be, but perhaps one day you can teleport to interview on our campus.
That'd be nice.
Hey,
Come and
that'd be
visit.
fun.
I think that'd be lovely.
Or we could go to them.
Or we could go to
Yeah.
them.
Or
Go to that.
vice versa.
Yeah.
Right? I think that it wasn't part of the plan originally, but we have a few extra minutes. So unless anyone objects, we could have some questions from the audience. If anybody wants to offer, I think that's probably turned on.
Is it on? Okay. Hi, I'm Austin Jung. I guess the question is, you see some of the top schools, the average GPAs are 3.7, so what you would consider a decent GPA is well below their average. Can a very good GMAT score compensate for that is one question. And another question is, does the major that they studied come into consideration? I guess I'm asking that as an electrical engineer. That's a different major than a business major. And yeah, those are my two questions.
The GMAT is definitely a great opportunity for you to make us forget about your GPA, especially at HEC Paris. At HEC Paris, on average, people have 6 years of experience. You cannot change your GPA, but you have an impact on your GMAT. So yes, a really good GMAT can definitely highlight your strengths and focus on that.
And also, too, you'll probably notice when schools are putting out the profile, I don't know if I've ever even seen a school put out its GPA 80% range, because the range is probably very, very wide. But in terms of your question about the major and things like that, my example, as extreme as it may be, is always this. If you have a 4.0 in basket weaving versus a 2.9 in biomedical engineering, that's a big difference. So it's less about that number. It's how you challenged yourself. Did you take some challenging classes while you were there? What was your curriculum like? And what kind of circumstances did you have during this time? It's going back to that optional essay, right? So people have told us, during this semester, it was challenging. Something happened. I had to take a full-time job. Or someone significant to me, there was a tragedy in the family. Well, we're not trying to penalize you for life that happens to everyone. Just be able to tell us what happened, maybe not in all detail, but then focus on the positive side. How did you overcome it? My freshman year, I partied, but I realized I was making a mistake. Look at my last 3 years, I was on the dean's list. That's what you want to emphasize when you're having a challenge with your GPA, so that it just gives us more data in combination with other parts of your application. So again, not just in a vacuum.
I'll certainly say you've got probably about 20 years of admissions experience on this panel, and we've been reading applications a really long time. And so, yes, we do dive deep. We are able to see the difference between different majors. We understand that an engineering degree is quite rigorous. We also look at where you went to school, because we understand the curriculums of different schools and kind of what that looks like. So please know that all of that is taken into consideration, and many of us will reach out to you and work with you to obviously help you create the most competitive application possible.
And I would just add that one thing to remember is there are a small number of applicants that actually meet all of the averages that you see on the profile, right? And so if someone has a strength in one area, that may offset a perceived weakness in another area. So I always think that's an important thing to remember, because you see those averages and you think that must be it. That must be what I need to do. And in fact, it's not necessarily.
Anyone else? Then all that's left is for me to thank you all for your candor and your insight, and that is the the admissions panel for CentreCourt Houston, and I'm Marc Ethier, Managing Editor of Poets and Quants. Thanks all for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good luck with your application.
Yes, best of luck, everybody.
It's an amazing experience. I hope you do it if that's what you're aiming for.
Awesome.
All right.
Thank you.